my name is Dr. Josephine Harris. I am a psychotherapist as well as international psychologist. I'm also a certified mental health wellness coach and advocate. What I want to talk about is really, I want to thank Miss Sherelle D. Mims from inviting me to her stage, her platform. I really appreciate it. Today, one of my topics is talking about taking care of your mental health as a caregiver. As a caregiver, we know that let me explain what is a caregiver first. A caregiver is someone who gives care or help to someone else. A caregiver may support a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a child, other family member, or a friend. A caregiver may be giving support to someone else because of the health condition, age, disability, or injury. And caregiving can include many different types of activities such as cooking, cleaning, shopping, helping someone with their household needs, helping someone with their day-to-day needs, such as dressing and bathing. Also, you can be driving or going with someone to healthcare appointments. You can also helping someone with the needs in many other ways. But you may not see yourself as a caregiver, as a mental health professional, but if you are giving care and assistance to someone else, it is important to recognize caregiving work you do. One of the things I noticed with caregivers, especially in mental health field, 70% of the 70 to 40% of the caregivers show signs of depression, and with appropriate of the quarter of health, the caregiver might meet the diagnosis and criteria of depression. Like when being a caregiver with depression, as being a caregiver, it can physically and emotionally be stressful. When taking care of a loved one, caregivers often being put other needs before their own. Some of the caregivers often sacrifice a lot of time, energy, and their own physical and emotional needs, which can lead to stress, anxiety, and depression. And one of the things as a caregiver, we have to recognize that the signs and the symptoms of depression in the caregivers, because these most is important signs and symptoms. And some of the signs and symptoms that sometimes I tell my clients as a caregiver, and I'm also a caregiver because I care for my dad. But most of the times when I tell my clients and some of the signs that they need to watch out for, and if they feeling these signs, like avoiding pressurable, meaningfully activity, because you might feel guilty about taking time off from a caregiving, repetition nightmares, intrusive thoughts about the patient, the loved one, including diagnosed treatment or future prognosis. Inability to sleep. Sometimes you have that inability to sleep. Sometimes you have difficulty falling asleep. Sometimes you have difficulty staying asleep. Feeling exhausted, severe tiredness. And me as a mental health professional, as I was taking care of my dad, I began to feel very exhausted, because right now I'm taking care of my dad from Washington State, and he is in Savannah, Georgia. And it's kind of difficult for me to be going back and forth, but I do. Sometimes I go back and forth to Savannah, Georgia. I travel and I fly back and forth. So that's one of the most difficult times for me, is the travel, because even though I work from home and I'm a travel therapist, I have to actually take my work with me. So I have to really know when I'm getting exhausted and in severe tiredness. So that's one of the signs and symptoms. Another one is feeling tension. You have a lot of muscle tension. Your body aches. You feel lethargic. You feel like you don't feel like doing anything. So we have to watch for these signs and symptoms and dealing with that. And sometimes you have the inability to concentrate and remember details. Like when I had just visited my father, because he just was in a hospital. So I had to go into Savannah. I had to travel to Savannah, Georgia. But during that time, I had just got back from Savannah, Georgia. So it was like exhausting to me. So I had to really think about my mental health and my well-being as a therapist, because as therapists, we tell our clients, okay, you need to relax. Okay, you having too much tension. So now I have to take that in as myself, as like, okay, you're having too much attention, you need to relax. But seeing a therapist as a therapist, like Michelle was saying, but you have to have a therapist. Even though you are a therapist, you have to have a therapist. A coach, you have to have a coach. So me, as being a therapist, I have to have a therapist as well. So another thing you can watch out for is anxiety attacks. About and when anxiety attacks about properly, and it also it is very tells on your medical remedy. And you have to also think about inability to talk to others about your experience as a caregiver. Feel free to talk to people about your caregiver. Tell them how you feel. Tell them what is the outcome. Make sure that everything is all right with you as well. So another sign and symptoms that you can look at is inability to enjoy activities. And once you find pleasurable in these activities, when you liking the activities that you used to enjoy and you no longer enjoy them activities, that is a sign of being depression. That is a sign of falling into a depression. So you don't want to fall into a depression. You want to get the help that you need. So take that into consideration as well. And another thing is thoughts of suicide, because you feel overwhelmed, worthless, inadequate. And sometimes when you have taken care of that family member and you have these suicide thoughts, or you thinking about these suicide thoughts, you need to seek the help you need. You need to even reach out to the 1-800-suicide hotline, because we are human, and you're going to have a lot of feelings that flourish, that's come up inside of you, even though that you know that you are trying to be a caregiver for your loved one, but you are going to have these feelings. So the proper thing is to get the help that you need, and watch out for the signs and symptoms. If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling an anxiety or anxiety attacks, if you're unable to enjoy the activities that you used to enjoy, or if you have these thoughts of suicide, you need to reach out to someone, reach out to a mental health professional, reach out to the suicide hotline and all that. But you have to think about it too. In caring for a loved one, it's normal to feel stress. And yes, it's normal to feel stress. And during the stressful situation, caregivers do have stress. And sometimes we put a lot on ourselves and our mental status. And we're not thinking about how we feeling the inside, and how caregiving could affect our mental health. But it really does affect your mental health. And one of the things also look at is the anxiety you can have in dealing with being a caregiver as a mental health professional. And when I mean anxiety disorder is real, it's serious. It's a medical condition such as heart disease or diabetes. With anxiety disorder are most of the common mental health disorder in the United States. But you lose that control. You have the fear of loved one well-being. You uncertainty about the future, of worrying about health, finance, and how can all of this become extremely overwhelming for caregivers. And the result of this, it can cause anxiety and stress. And like I said, with the signs and the symptoms of depression, the signs and symptoms in anxiety in caregivers also is very important and very urgency for you guys to look at. And one of the signs you can look for is the consistent fearless, like worrying, impede on your doom. You're worrying too much. You're worrying about this. You're worrying about that. What if this happened? What if that happened? So you have to really take into of your mental health. Another thing is that the depression that lasts longer than 2 weeks is a sign of very, very extreme anxiety disorders. Other things like trouble eating, shortness of breath that keeps coming back. Another thing is sleep problems, like I mentioned before, is difficult sleeping, difficult staying asleep, difficult even equipping to even falling asleep. Another thing is like heart racing, beating, and your chest starting to hurt. So these are the signs you have to watch out for anxiety, because anxiety in caregiving is extremely, extremely important. And if you know someone experienced any of these signs and symptoms, please consult with your doctor or contact a medical health provider. Some of the things I realized as a caregiver, you get with mental health, and I'm not going to stay too long on the burnout. The burnout rate in mental health professionals is very serious, because we as mental health professionals deal with taking care of our family or loved ones, and also we deal with clients. So you really have to watch out with the mental health with the burnout rate, because burnout is real, and different things happen during burnout as well. When you have the burnout, is feeling exhausted, not getting enough work, rest, being in an emotional state of mind. It will help you to also your health also will deteriorate. So you have to watch for your mental health as well. And as I explaining this to you guys, and you guys are watching this, and how can you tell if a caregiver is stressed out? So for me, sometimes it's hard to tell how stressed you feel. And for me, how stressed I feel when I know that as a caregiver and as a mental health provider, for me, stress is like I shut down. I don't want to be bothered. I cleans a lot, which I know that's kind of weird, but I cleans a lot. So stress for me comes in different stages, and stress might for you come in another stage. You have to ask yourself, are you feeling these ways? Like, I can't get enough sleep. I don't have enough time for myself. I don't have enough time to be with my family and other family members. Or you feel guilty or hopeless and irrelative or angry about the situation. Like when I used to take care of my mama as well, as she passed away. So I used to feel guilty knowing that I'm the middle child on my mom's side, and I'm the youngest child on my dad's side. So that guilty will come into you. Is like when I used to feel guilty because I'm in another state and my family is in Georgia and I'm in Washington State. So I used to feel guilty about not going down there, seeing them enough, although I have other siblings that can help care for my family. But it was so difficult for me because they really depend on me and expected me to do a lot. Although I live in Washington State, it was very difficult for me because each week I'm getting a phone call, and it's like I can't travel a lot to Savannah, Georgia. Each week I get a phone call. So I was feeling guilty and hopeless, and not knowing that this was not knowing I was into a lot of stress, not knowing that how I felt. I was stressed because of what my family was putting on me and what the expectation that they had on me. So my family and I dealt with a lot, and I deal with a lot in the situation as well, because when you are stressed and you feeling stressed, and it's difficult for you to explain the stress and difficult for you to recognize the stress, because we are our worst critics, especially as a mental health professional. You tell your clients that, okay, this is what you do when you're stressed, this is what you're not doing when you're stressed, you need to get more of this, you need to get more rest, you need to eat healthy. But we don't take in our own advice. So I had to really tune in with my mental health, really tune in with my soul and my spiritual soul, and think about what I tell my clients that I need to take in, and that I need to get the rest, get the food, get the nutrition that I need. I do not need to feel guilty about not being there at that moment, because I know that I was there all the time. So I didn't need to feel guilty because I wasn't there at that moment, that I couldn't travel at that moment. So be careful of putting these feelings inside of you, and it's taking a toll on your mental status and your mental health, because as a caregiver, we tend to feel like we have to do it all, and we feel guilty if we don't have to do it. We feel guilty if we don't do it all, or we feel guilty if we're not giving enough. And from my perspective, you are giving enough. You are giving enough. You are giving your all, because you're there for your family member. Another one you have to watch out for: don't do other things anymore beyond taking care of your loved one. Like me, when I'm taking care of my dad, I was studying for the test. I'm studying for the test. I'm seeing clients. I'm speaking. I'm traveling. I'm doing all these things and not really realizing like that's a lot to do when taking care of a loved one. So I really had to decrease a lot of my activities that's been put on my plate, because it is very difficult for you not to feel that you overwhelmed, feel that you not enough, feel that you feeling guilty because you have to take on so many activities. But you don't have to take on all these activities. You have to take, for me, I have to take one day at a time, and making sure that I'm taking care of my mental health, and making sure that I'm taking care of my physical needs and my mental, my emotional and spiritual needs, because I have to be really rejuvenate in order for me to help my clients go through the things that they're going through. So I also need help as well. So another thing is have arguments. Like another thing you need to watch out for, if you ask yourself, if you have an argument with family members, sometimes we tend to argue with a lot of family members, and it's unnecessary. The arguments, this is when you feeling stressful, when you begin to argue with your family members, like even the ones that not in your immediate family members. You can argue with the church members. You can argue with your co-workers. You can argue with your husband, your spouse, your children. So that's when you feel yourself being stressed and stretched to your limits. So you need to sit back and take time for yourself. Another thing often people see is you cry often and may lose a lot of interest in some things that you used to enjoy. Like for me, when I a couple of months ago, I was overwhelmed with a lot of things was going on. So I started, and I like to read, and I started to lose interest in reading. I started to lose interest of even going on social media. So I really had to sit back, think about what I was doing, what kind of stressors was I putting on myself, what kind of stressors was I having. So I had to really take some time to myself to meditate on God's word, to read his God word, to let God come into my life so that I can pray that I need to relieve a lot of stress. And that helps me from getting away from social media, getting away from all my routine. I had to take a couple of days off as well so that I can get my mental health in check and my physical and my medical health in check, because I was beginning to feel tired, overwhelmed. I was beginning to feeling like I didn't want to be bothered, and that's not like me, because I'm a people person and I'm a well-rounded people person. But I was beginning to not want to be bothered with anybody. So that's when I knew that I was beginning to be stressed. And when I say stress, when stress hits you, you will know it. And sometimes you will feel yourself in different ways. Like I used to worry, and one of the things that I used to do is worrying about not having enough money, even though that I know I have it, but that was the stress that I was going through. And that was the stress that I knew that I was beginning to be, my anxiety was beginning to be kicked in, so that I knew that it was time for me to see by myself physically, emotional, mentally, and spiritually. So I had to really sit myself down. Well, God sit me down, and he said, look here, you need to sit down, relax, and let me finish the work. So I really had to sit down, relax, take a lot of things and meditate so that I can be the best caregiver or the best mental health provider for my clients and for my family as well. One of the things we also take in as a caregiver when you come to stress is you don't know the best way to care for my loved one. You don't know the best way to care for your loved one. So sometimes it might be difficult for you to figure out what to do or how to care for your loved one, because you are under so much stress. And then you start snapping at the loved one you caring for. And when I mean that, you start getting irritated with the person you caring for. You started getting frustrated with the person you care for. Sometimes some thoughts go in your head like, okay, what do you want now? So you have to really think about the stress levels that you go through and take care of your mental health, because your mental health is so important when caring for a caregiver as yourself. And one of the things you can another thing is feeling how your health has been negatively affecting you, how your health been negatively affecting you. Like a couple of months ago, I knew that I was stressed because I started getting a lot of chest pains, and I'm wondering why I'm having all these chest pains. And I'm like, okay, God, this is not right. So I had to go to the hospital, and I explained to them, and they were saying that I was under a lot of stress lately, in which I work on a lot of stress. And I tell everyone, especially my clients as myself, we have to really think about ourself as a whole. So if we stressed out, then how are we going to take care of our loved ones in a most productive way, and how are we going to take care of ourselves in a more productive way? So you have to really think about what kind of stress levels are you at. Are you having these anxiety? Are you feeling depression? Are you having so much variation, guilty of taking care of your loved ones? So one of the things, and you have to really think about, I'm gonna talk about the different kinds of caregiver stress, and you might have one more of these caregiver stress. One of the things that I talked about for myself, and I mentioned it in myself, is the physical part of taking care of the loved one can be tiring, but you may have to you have to eat well and exercise well. And I felt myself, okay, I need to exercise more, I need to eat well, because now as I was stressing out, I was missing healthy meals and not eating properly. So I had to make sure that I was taking care of my physical health, because that affects your health as a whole, while helping a loved one move around and move from bed to bed. And it also can be very hard on your body. So one of the things you really want to do is taking care of that physical health. Another thing that we talked about is worrying about money, the finance. It can be expensive, provided to care for your loved one, trying to manage all the costs that can cause stress. Like helping others to manage their finance can be very complicated and time consuming. Like I discussed it when I had flew down to Savannah, Georgia to take care of my father. And I also was stressed about his finance, because his finance wasn't in order, and my auntie was taking care of him, and he has this other family member that was taking his money, so he didn't have enough to get him the care that he needed. So I had to really get his finance in order, his legal aspect in order as well. So that can be another stressor on top of your mental health, trying to get your family members and loved ones you're taking care of financially stable, and it can be time consuming, because you're trying to get everything in order, making sure that they have the finance and making sure that you have the finance in order to care for your loved one. Another one is environmental. When you have gone through many changes to help care for your loved one, it's how you spend your day, where you live may change things. The kinds of changes can cause stress, and it can affect how you can connect with your personal and professional support system. And I say this strongly, say this: you have to have a very, very strong support system. Get that support system you need, because as a caregiver, as for myself as a mental health professional, you really, really, really have to get that support system in place, because that support system is going to help you through this very difficult time of caring for a loved one. Another one is dealing with the social environment. You may spend too much time with your loved one that you don't have time for other family members. And you have to think about it. As a family member and friends and around you, feel support can be stressful, because some family members want you to give them a lot of time. Some family members you're not giving enough of time. So you have to really think, you have to really balance your social network, because sometimes when as us, when you take care of a loved one, and you have you have your family home, but you're taking care of your mother, or you're taking care of your father, or auntie or uncle, or a child, and you're giving so much attention to that loved one that you losing track of the family that you really have to care for as well. For me, well, it's different for me. Well, it used to be different for me. It's different for me now, because now that my children are adult children, so that's different. But I have to realize that I have a husband too, so he need that connection as well as your caregiver need that connection, and you have to really learn how to balance that out, because because I'm living in Washington State and my dad is in Savannah, Georgia, and I have to be careful because my husband also needs support and connection and leave that attention as well as my father do. But I had to really balance it out, because I can't give a whole lot of attention to my loved one and neglecting my husband, because then you really going to have some problems within yourself, because you have to really be careful with that social network and how do you support each and every one of these persons using balance in your life. So be careful with that, not supporting one family member more than another family member, neglecting your lifestyle but neglecting your family, like the person you care for lifestyle. So you really have to really balance that out, making sure that everyone is getting the attention that you need, and also giving yourself attention as well. Another one is the emotion behind it. Caregiver stress because you feel like helpless, hopeless, depressed, lonely. Sometimes you have self-doubt. Sometimes you even being embarrassed that you have to care for your father. And sometimes even a loved one, sometimes you get frustrated. Sometimes you get afraid and overwhelmed. And guess what? It's okay to have all these feelings. That's okay. But you need the support, the help, that you need, so that they can help you through it. And sometimes you may also start to feel angry and resentment towards the person you care for. And a lot of times we think about, okay, I'm caring for this person. They did all these things for me, but they really wasn't there for me. And that happens with me as my care for, I don't know if you guys know my story, but the care for my father now is my biological father. He was there, actually really wasn't there for me. I was raised by my stepfather. But just because my father wasn't there, that doesn't mean that he doesn't love me and I didn't love him. Because when he was there, he showed me love. So I vouch for that. Although that he wasn't in my life and my stepfather was, I don't neglect my father, because that during that time, it's people have different reasons for not being in your life for during that time. But I don't fault my father for not just being in my life, because I'm his daughter, and I'm there when he needs me. So I don't go back and rumble through the past because I was a child then. But that's why we have to think about the forgiveness part, because my dad was never really a part of my life. My stepdad raised me, but I don't see my father as not being there for me, because I love him. And let me tell you, your blessings might be coming through your family members. So I'm there for my father when he needs me, and I'm taking care of him, and I don't let the past impede on my present. So you have to be careful with that as well. And you have to these feelings is all the feelings that I talked about is completely normal, and they can cause you to feel guilty and stressed, like I said. And you can even indicate that you might be benefit from other supports, like find a support system, go to support groups, go to talk to your friends, talk to other family members, talk to join certain groups, because they all have support groups out there, even for mental health professional groups they have out there. They have parenting groups out there as caring for loved ones out there. They even have groups that you can join and be open, and they have closed groups where you can be open about your feelings and things like that. So when I'm wrapping up here, one of the things that I came up with is Caregiver Bill of Rights. And when I mean Caregiver Bill of Rights, I'm gonna read it to you guys. It said, I have the right to connect with myself in my own unique experience. I have the right to take care of myself. This is not selfish. I give you my energy to take care better of my person as a person. I have the right to to help others, even if the person I care for disagree. I have the right to keep parts of my life that do not include the person I care for. I have my own identity, my own life outside of caregiving. I have the right to do things just for myself whenever I want to. I have the right to get angry, feel depressed, and talk about difficult feelings I experience. I have the right to take pride in what I'm doing, to be proud of courage, to take courage to myself, the needs of a person I care for. I have the right to expect and demand improvements and resources to help and support caregivers. And I want to leave you guys with these rights to stone. I had the right to add my own statement, to write to lists based on my own unique situation, feelings, and experience. And remember, I am Dr. Josephine Harris, and you have the right to care for yourself. Thank you, Sherelle Mills.
Come on, Dr. Joe. You are right on time. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe, for presenting mental health and you. And we know as people in mental health, it's real out here, right? It's a lot going on. It is very real. So we thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Keep in contact with Dr. Joe. She has mental health information for those that are having challenges right now. I mean, whether it's bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever going on, major depressive disorder. That's the main thing that's going on in the community is the depression. They call it major depressive disorder. And now they have new names out, right?
Yes.
One of the new names, right, Dr. Joe, is that high functioning depression. What is that? High functioning depression. You're working, you're doing everything you need to do, yet you're depressed, yet you're isolated, yet you don't feel well, right?
Yes.
Y'all remember that young lady, Miss America? She jumped up from a 60 or 70-story building. She had high functioning depression. That's what they had diagnosed her with. So everyone on the platform and in the Facebook audience, take care of yourself. Get the help that you need. Call somebody. It's people out there that can help you. I challenge all of us to see a therapist if you need to. Do not suffer alone.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
There is help. So thank you so much, Dr. Joe, for sharing that with us. We can go on and on and on about mental health. That is the number one thing that's going on in society today because the pandemic has pushed people in places they never knew they would be. And major depressive disorder is one of them.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. You're welcome. And I can be reached on all social media at Dr. Joe Harris. And you also can reach me at Common Minds LLC.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe.
Thank you, Sherelle.
My pleasure.